everybody, my name is Martin Ellis. I'm one of the house organists here at Hilbert Circle Theater with the newly installed Wurlitzer Theater pipe organ. I thought we'd take a little bit of a tour and start down here in the bowels of it all. And this is the Spencer blower that was actually installed on another organ. For you techies out there, this thing is on 220 volts, the motor for it being on the other side, and it runs at 17.5 horsepower. Which is quite a bit for a pipe organ. The one at my church with 4 manuals runs on 7.5. So it takes a lot of wind to run this instrument and to get us from down here in the basement all the way up to those chambers that are 3 stories above the floor seats in the auditorium. So I thought we'd start down here, show you what this is. It was restored by Carlton Smith, who did the restoration of the whole organ, and masterfully painted so that it looks really nice even though nobody ever sees it. So I thought we would start with this Spencer Orgablow. You know, I thought it'd be really interesting for us to let you hear what this is like when we turn it on. So give us just a second, let me run around the corner and we'll turn it on. Now we take a little bit of a chamber tour. This is the side that would be on your left as you sit in the auditorium or up in the balcony. And it is, like I said, 3 stories above where you sit, or kind of right on that balcony level. And we are in a little staircase kind of hidden back here in the building. It was always here because there was a theater organ in this building to begin with. So this was the way that you got to the chamber. And we go on up. This is what we call the main chamber. Out of the 2, there's a main and a solo. And these are really, really tight once you get up in here. So come on up. This is the main chamber of our mostly Wurlitzer pipe organ that we have here at Circle. From the front, this main chest is one of the original Wurlitzer wind chests. And it has 5 or 6 sets of pipes on it. Wurlitzer was known for a lot of what we call big scale pipe work. That's what you see here. Pipes that are actually large in diameter. They're also very tall. For those of you that don't know that much about pipe organs, the taller the pipe is, the lower the pitch. So as we get to these pipes on the back wall that are mounted all the way up there on the wall, those of course are the lowest pipes that you hear, and the low C that it plays is the same low C that our contrabass section is able to play. Up above, we have what we call a chrysoglot. It's a little metal harp type sound, similar to a xylophone, only with metal bars. It plays from the keyboards down below. It's very quiet and ethereal. One of the features that this organ has that others do not is a classical division. That is right here in the middle. And that pipework comes from pipework from an SD organ. The small pipes right here in the middle, right out on the other side of the walkboard, are what we call a mixture. That is a token classical organ sound. And that comes from an Austin pipe organ, actually. And those were all revoiced and rescaled to be in this instrument so that we could do things like this Saens. Behind it is more of our classical pipework that was added. This chamber contains most of our foundational kinds of sounds, and I've had audience members say to me, hey, the organ sounds like it's all coming from the left when we do a classical piece or a piece with chorus. And that's because most of our pipe work that has that sort of a sound is over here. In the very, very back, or the far wall, are the big pipes of our tuba, and that is played by the pedals. And those were, again, from another organ and kind of give you that thunderous tuba type of sound. Hi everybody, this is my favorite chamber of the whole organ. People would tell you it's probably because it has some of the loudest things in the organ. Little joke that my friends make to me. But it has the most interesting things in the organ. There are things that are definite theater organ types of sounds. You're looking at one of them right here is the marimba. Down below and up above, these are the percussion instruments that we have with this being a theater organ. This is a full-size marimba, just like the one down in the percussion section. Above it is a xylophone, there's orchestra bells, and traps. The problem that theater organs had in theaters back in the 1920s is with all of this behind a wall and behind what we call swell shades, and I'll show you those in just a minute. It's a little bit hard to hear some of these instruments the way you would hear them on the stage. Nonetheless, they're here, and they were effects that you could use for silent movies. You use them to sound like an orchestra, basically. So we replaced all of these guys down here on the stage. Isn't that fun? Okay, we are looking at the pipe chest of the Wurlitzer organ. Showing you some of the little short pipes right here in the front, and also these are what we call swell shades. These open to let the sound out. And so as I push my foot down on the pedal below, that changes the volume in the room. Look at the brass pipes right there. That's called a brass trumpet. And it's brass to get the right sound. Here's more of it. And that was to give you a solo trumpet kind of effect. Just kind of scan around the chamber a little bit. Again, big pipes on the back wall. Those give us the effect of really, really low. You can see some of the what we call resonators sticking up there. That's another tuba set. So anyway, just really interesting things. Here's our cymbal, Klaxon horn, drum, and then way up there on the top is the action for the orchestra bells, and you can see the resonators for that. So really interesting stuff. If I can get a visual of it, back there in the corner is a baby grand piano, and yes, it is hooked up to the organ. A little bit hard to hear, but fun nonetheless. Here we are at the control center of the organ. This is called the console. The shell of this was built in the late 1920s for a theater over in Ohio. And everything that you see here in the middle and the keyboards have been redone, and includes a lot of new parts for this custom installation that we did here at Circle. But this is where it all happens, and it's hard to see this from places out in the room. But here you are up close. I have a lot of people ask me about the different colored stops or stop tabs on this organ. And in the early days of theater organ, what they did was encode all the red stops were woodwind and brass. Anything that you see is white, it's kind of a flute sound or a basic organ type sound. And then the yellowish stops are string sounds. So it was easy to get to those if you were watching a silent movie and trying to come up with quick by hand registrations. It would be something that you could do. And so we do a lot of mix of those kinds of sounds. Also, the difference between a theater organ and a classical organ is that every set of pipes shows up at many different pitch levels. So for instance, this diapason, which is a basic church organ kind of a sound, the same set of pipes shows up at 3 different pitch levels. And so it gives me the flexibility to mix those different sounds at different octaves, which is kind of neat. How this piece relates to the organ symphony, it's a very unique work by Saens. And the organ solo part actually isn't a solo. It is an integrated tone color that he added to the orchestra. As an organist himself, he was asked to write this piece for a large Cavaille Cole organ in France. And it would integrate the organ in and out of the orchestral texture, which makes it different than a typical organ concerto. An organ concerto, you play your solo part, and it pretty much dominates the entire work. In this piece, the organ comes in and out. In some cases, it plays an accompanimental role and is supposed to sit underneath melodies by the violins or by the cellos, the woodwind section. And so as you listen to the piece of music, you'll hear this kind of underneath gurgling of the organ, I think, as it were, that sits underneath the texture of the orchestra, which makes it very unique, makes it a lot of fun to play. It actually makes it hard to play because the organ comes in and out and it's keeping track of where everything is. And but that is the difference between the organ symphony and a lot of other organ concerto works. There are older pieces, there are certainly Baroque organ concertos that were written as a strictly solo piece. So this was the first time the organ was included as just one of the orchestra members. And so it makes sense to have it kind of back here with the percussion guys, and I love being back here. One of the things that we have to do here at Circle, we do have a video monitor and a sound monitor, because with the chambers that you saw out in the room it is very, very difficult to hear the pipes in this location. Even on the edge of the stage, it's very, very hard to hear. So since the organ was put in, the sound guys here and video guy here at the theater have come up with this really creative and helpful installation for me, and it makes it possible to put this console relatively anywhere without taking up a lot of chair space that the violins would normally use. You know, primarily this organ was built as a theater organ. That means an instrument that plays popular music, not necessarily church music or orchestral music, although organists were asked to do orchestral transcriptions quite frequently. So you might hear something like this. Just to give you a quick idea.